Hello, I'm Super Orange Cat, and here I am today covering Toonami's ratings from November 7th, 2020. Let's start at the top of the block. Dragon Ball Super clocks in at a .21, Sword Art Online War of the Underworld Part 2's premiere at a .17, Fire Force Season 2's premiere at a .17, the Assassination Classroom at a .16, Gemusetto Death Beats at a .12, followed by a .11, Naruto Shippuden at a .11, and Demon Slayer at a .09. Overall, this was again something of a disappointing week for Toonami in the ratings. As I could say, my yardstick I used to measure is just the sheer number of shows that get to a .2 or higher. I say 2 is an average week, 3 is a good week, and 1 is a bad week. We had exactly 1 this week, and that was Dragon Ball Super once again. And I'm just going to go show by show and cover the ratings. I think this is as good as we're going to get from Dragon Ball Super. I have no reason to believe, especially if the last few times it's aired, it's ever going to really do better than like a .21 or a .22. And that really starts to beg questions of should something else lead the block, which I personally think should. And the reason why it becomes more apparent as I go along here, and it's the War of the Underworld Part 2 getting a .17. You could point out 400ths of a drop between that and Dragon Ball Super is not exactly ideal, but at the same time, it's one of those where you said it does kind of well given the lead in here. You know, .17, I think the War of the Underworld Part 1 was pulling in like .19, .20 a lot, so it was a small drop off from there. However, considering that I believe it was led in by My Hero Academia, new episodes of My Hero Academia earlier, it had a bit of a better lead in. So I think here it's almost, you can argue, it did just as good as it really could in its position. And to further that fact, you have Fire Force right afterwards at a .17. I'll say again, pretty solid considering, I mean, it held from the previous show in front of it. And a little tidbit here. Showbuzz Daily tracks the top 150 cable premieres for each day. And Sword Art Online was 61st. Fire Force was 62nd. And Assassination Classroom, which was right behind it at .16, was 64th. The exact numbers don't matter, the 60-something numbers, because it was saturated with election coverage, and they count like each hour like its own show, so that just diluted things. But usually if the numbers it got, these numbers would probably be in the mid to late 20s, which is still not as good as Toonami used to be. Toonami, just like last year, parts of this year, had like multiple shows in the top 10 consistently, and it appears that we're gone from those days, at least for the time being. But again, that just shows, why I point that out is to show just how rock solid the retention is between the 3 premiering shows right now in War of the Underworld, Fire Force, and Assassination Classroom. Which, my opinion, really raises the possibility that either really these 3 shows could really serve as a feasible lead-in. My personal pick out of the 3 would be Assassination Classroom, because I still think we have like 37 episodes left or something of that. We can get more time out of it being the lead off. We can get nearly a full calendar year of being the lead off. Meanwhile, you have War of the Underworld. I think there's only 11 episodes this core, so there's 10 episodes left. And I think Fire Force is a 20-something episode season, which means there's still about 20-something episodes left here. And that presumes there's no issues with episodes airing in terms of dubbing, which I think Funimation has actually gone out of their way to make sure Fire Force has been dubbed. I believe they're at least 10 episodes in. Please correct me if I'm wrong on that. And well, that's really as good as the good news gets for Toonami, those 3 shows, because it gets sad. And by it getting sad, I mean you have Gemusetto Death Beats dropping 400s. And no, I said, like, it talked about War of the Underworld dropping 400s. It had a higher starting point. Gemusetto had a lower starting point and dropped even more. And what makes it even more notable is between the 2 episodes, it had a notable drop again. And again, you can't see it here from these numbers where I said .12 and .11. But what you see here, what I got, is when you look at Showbuzz Daily, it tracks each one as separate entries. The .12 was towards the middle of all the different shows that did happen to get a .12. So you can say that it probably was around like a .121 or .120. The second one was towards the bottom of the .11s, which means it was probably like a .106, 0.105, which indicates an even larger drop-off. And when you have a notable drop-off like that between the 2 halves of an episode, You don't see this often on Adult Swim. Usually Adult Swim, it's like, okay, if you're here to watch the first episode, you're going to watch the second episode, it's right after it. This is kind of scary, especially considering how low the starting point already was for Gemusetto Death Beats. And I checked, and I believe for not just Toonami, but I believe Adult Swim history, this is the lowest rated season premiere of any show they've ever had. You know, Eric Andre, the season 5 was like a 0.12 also, but to give credit to them, they've actually increased in recent weeks. Interesting considering I think they threw Rick and Morty's now back to being the lead-in for that, and it apparently I guess is serving as a better lead-in than Primal did. As like the second Primal came off the schedule, the ratings started increasing for Toonami and not Toonami, for Adult Swim Sunday nights again, which is why I stopped talking about it because I mean everything looks fine now. Eric Andre's getting good ratings, even Deathcore LLC is looking like it's getting decent ratings again. But again, back to Toonami, and like I said, when I watched Gemusetto Death Beats, it just rung a lot like an Adult Swim show. And by Adult Swim show, I mean the bad type of Adult Swim show. I mean more like Tender Touches, or whenever Jenna Freeman, something like a Three Busy Deborah's level bad show. Not something like Rick and Morty or Laser Wolf, which is a surprise if you watch my first review of Laser Wolf. I trashed the show. I came around to that show actually, and now the more I watched it, I kind of ended up liking Laser Wolf. And yeah, but again, and this just like if you're looking at every bad thing about Adult Swim, you can just about find it in Gemusetto Death Beats. It is not a good show. And then after that, you have Naruto holding steady. I mean, by holding steady, I mean retaining Gemusetto Death Beats, which really isn't a high task, but Naruto at least was up to that task, you know. And then you have Demon Slayer to 0.09. It is early in that season, and again, it's a rerun, so it's not like you can ever throw that many expectations behind that. But again, like I said, my thesis here is Toonami, I think to improve its ratings, the first thing it needs to do is to change the lead in. You could talk about, well, Dragon Ball is the biggest name far and away. Look how massive the fan base is. Yeah, but is it that massive? They're going to watch like an episode that's airing now for like the third time on Toonami. So I think it's like because if you consider that other brief time they reran alongside Dragon Ball Kai, I think it's like the third time for most of these episodes. Most of these time, I think all 3 times they were the lead into the block, those episodes. So again, that's just like at this point, I think you've worn out Dragon Ball Super as much as you can. And I think Assassination Classroom is and almost like and I think like the tiebreaker, like I said, was the sheer number of episodes we have left of Assassination Classroom. But at the same time, it reminds me for obvious reasons of something like My Hero Academia. And My Hero Academia, although it didn't necessarily get Dragon Ball Super premiere when Dragon Ball Super premiered ratings, it still was doing reasonable numbers starting the block. And I distinctly remember those being pretty good days for the block in terms of ratings, you know, because you mean something like Assassination, something like a My Hero Academia regularly pulled in at 0.25, sometimes got up to like a 0.3, you know, and I think Assassination Classroom has the potential to be that type of show, although it is a arc-based show. I think it's the type of show, too, from what I've seen. You can kind of jump in sometime in the first half of the show and be able to enjoy the ride and follow it. But again, that's just my personal opinion. What show do you think should be leading Toonami? Leave your comments, leave your opinions down below. I love reading them. If you like this content, if you want more Toonami news, ratings, content like this, please like, please comment, and subscribe. I am Super Orange Cat, and that is all.